Have you ever encountered someone who was so grumpy or unfriendly that you could help but wonder about the reasons behind their harshness? Maybe they reminded you of a cranky neighbor or an elderly relative who seemed stuck in a perpetual state of discontent. The air was always filled with the scent of blooming wildflowers and the gentle hum of life. Mrs. Margaret was the village's most notorious figure, a stout woman in her 60s, with a perpetual scowl and a tongue sharper than a thorn. The image of Mrs. Margaret's angry face and Tom's hurt expression haunted her. Driven by her inquisitive nature, she slipped out of bed, grabbed a flashlight, and tiptoed toward Mrs. Margaret's cottage. The moon cast long shadows over the garden, and the air was still. Peering through a cracked window, Emily gasped. They left small gifts at her doorstep: wildflowers, a drawing, a loaf of bread each time, accompanied by a kind note. Slowly, Mrs. Margaret began to respond. The doctors call it a rare skin disorder, but it's more than that. It makes me smell awful, and it's gotten worse. People started avoiding me, and I let it turn me bitter. Emily's eyes widened. But why be mean to everyone? Mrs. Margaret looked away, her voice trembling. I thought if I pushed people away first, it wouldn't hurt as much when they left, but it did. It still does. A simple act of kindness and a listening ear could be the medicine someone needs to heal not only their body, but also their spirit. What are some ways you can show kindness to those who seem distant or misunderstood in your life? Share your thoughts with us. And thank you for joining us today. Tom shifted uncomfortably. That's dumb. If you just told us, maybe we could have helped. Mrs. Margaret chuckled dryly. Perhaps you're right, lad. She paused, then added, this smell, it's like a disease of the soul as much as the body. The more I scorned others, the worse it got. One evening, she opened the door as they approached. They learned that stress and isolation could worsen certain skin disorders. They also found remedies, herbal baths, and a special ointment. And soon, other villagers joined in. They brought food, offered companionship, and even organized a community garden to include Mrs. Margaret. Her cottage, once a place of solitude, became a hub of laughter and warmth. The flies disappeared, and the sour odor faded. With Mrs. Margaret's permission, they gathered ingredients and helped her prepare the treatment. It wasn't a cure, but over the weeks, the smell lessened, and her mood lifted. You two are persistent. I'll give you that, she said, her voice less harsh. She invited them in, and they sat in her cluttered living room, the sour smell still lingering. Mrs. Margaret sat alone at her kitchen table, her head in her hands. Flies buzzed around her, and the sour smell was stronger here. It wasn't just an odor, it was as if the air itself recoiled from her. Standing opposite her was Tom, a scruffy 12-year-old boy known for his mischievous antics. She found him by the creek, skipping stones with Rusty. Emily and Tom sat beside her, Rusty at their feet. I was wrong, she admitted to the gathered crowd. I thought my attitude protected me, but it only made me sicker. You all taught me that compassion can heal more than medicine. Emily smiled, squeezing Tom's hand. They had turned a village outcast into a friend, proving that even the smallest acts of kindness could change lives. Tom, she said hesitantly, I saw something weird at Mrs. Margaret's last night. She looked sad, and there were flies all around her. Do you think she's sick? Tom frowned, tossing another stone. Maybe, but she's always so mean. Who'd care if she is? Emily bit her lip. I don't know, but it didn't feel right. Maybe we should help her. Tom laughed. Help? She'd probably yell at us again, he said dismissively. His orange shirt was stained with mud, and his sneakers were untied. As usual, they'd bring Mrs. Margaret some homemade soup, her favorite, according to village gossip, and see if they could talk to her. What do you want now? She demanded. We made you soup, Emily said softly, holding out the pot. We thought you might be hungry. Mrs. Margaret's eyes narrowed, but the gesture seemed to catch her off guard. Soup, she muttered. Why would you bother? Because no one should be alone, Emily replied bravely. For a moment, Mrs. Margaret's expression softened, but then she waved them off. Take it away. I don't need your pity. As she turned, the sour smell hit him again. Stronger than before, Tom wrinkled his nose. But Emily grabbed his arm before he could say anything rude. Emily's mother helped them prepare a pot of leek and potato soup, and the two children set off, carrying the steaming pot between them. Beside him stood his loyal dog, Rusty, wagging his tail nervously. The cobblestone streets wound through rows of quaint cottages, each with its own tale. Mrs. Margaret barked, pointing a trembling finger at Tom. "Get off my property before I call the constable. Children like you have no manners." Tom's face flushed red, but he stood his ground. "I was just looking for Rusty's ball. It rolled into your garden, and I didn't mean any harm." "Rubbish!" Mrs. Margaret snapped, her voice dripping with contempt. "You're all the same lazy, disrespectful hooligans. Now go!" Emily watched from behind a hedge, her heart sinking. She knew Tom wasn't a bad kid. He was just clumsy and full of energy. But Mrs. Margaret's harsh words seemed to cut deeper than usual. As Tom trudged away, head hung low, Emily noticed something strange, a faint, unpleasant odor wafting from Mrs. Margaret's direction. It wasn't the usual smell of her garden flowers. It was something sour, almost sickly. She shook it off and decided to check on Tom later. Among the villagers was Emily, a 10-year-old girl with bright blue eyes and a heart brimming with curiosity. She lived with her parents in a cozy house near the village green, where she spent her days exploring the woods and making friends with the local fauna. Their negativity could be a puzzle, leaving you curious about the hidden story that shaped their demeanor. This is a story of a woman who showed nothing but scorn and disdain toward those around her until a group of kids managed to unravel the hidden pain that had hardened her heart. In the charming little village of Willowbrook, nestled deep in the English countryside, one sunny afternoon, as Emily skipped along the path, she overheard a sharp exchange near Mrs. Margaret's garden. "You insolent little brat!" That night, as the village settled into silence, Emily couldn't sleep. The next morning, Emily sought out Tom. Despite his skepticism, Emily's determination won him over. Together, they devised a plan. When they knocked on Mrs. Margaret's door, she opened it with her usual scowl. Over the next few days, Emily and Tom didn't give up. "I suppose I owe you an explanation," Mrs. Margaret sighed, rubbing her temples. "I've had this condition for years." Inspired, Emily suggested they researched her condition using an old encyclopedia from the village library. Word spread through Whip on a crisp autumn day as the leaves turned golden. Mrs. Margaret hosted a small party in her garden. So remember, dear listener, sometimes the grumpiest of faces may be hiding the saddest of hearts.